In certain programs or recovery stories, you might hear people talking about being an achiever or a people pleaser or a caretaker or a perfectionist or all these different things, like these kind of labels, and how it was important to figure that out or change that in some way in order to move forward with recovery. But a lot of people don't get kind of the deeper level of this and what actually makes a difference in changing whether that's a part that's helping you or hurting you in your recovery journey. I got this question recently from a client and I thought it was a really good one. She asked, what do you think of the practice in recovery of figuring out if you're a people pleaser or an overachiever or a worrier, etc.? Do you think it's helpful to classify yourself in these ways? I thought you might bring some nuance to this. Yes, that is kind of my thing. It's like always complicating it and making it simpler at the same time. So first of all, is it important to figure this out and classify yourself in these ways? I think it is important to investigate your patterns and beliefs and what tends to drive you. Do you tend to say, you overdid it or something like that? Was it because you wanted to achieve a certain thing? Like you felt like, I've got to get this done at work, or you wanted people to think a certain way about you. I don't want to let people down. I want people to think that I'm helpful, or, something like that. Do you have a pattern of ruminating and worrying on certain thoughts? Do you have a pattern of indecision? Do you have a pattern of being fearful of, oh, if I do this, I'm going to have symptoms, or if I have symptoms, it means this, and that's, I'm never going to recover, and all that sort of thing. Or alternately, do you have a pattern of kind of saying, oh, it'll probably work out, it'll be fine, I feel okay right now, so I'm just going to do these millions of things on my to-do list. It's really helpful to start to notice these patterns because they drive our behavior and they're tied to deeper beliefs. Is it helpful to classify yourself in that certain way? I don't think so. I like to use the parts work terminology, which comes from Richard Schwartz and IFS, where you might say, I have a strong people-pleasing part. There's a part of me that really values making other people happy, even sometimes to the detriment of my own needs or my own well-being. Or there's a part of me that has a really strong drive for achievement or for certain goals. And sometimes it pushes me to do more than I really know is good for me and my current boundaries and capacity. And then we remember that these parts are actually trying to help us. It can be easy to demonize the perfectionist part that's constantly criticizing you maybe and saying it's not good enough. But that part is actually trying to help you out. Richard Schwartz says there are no bad parts, which I really love. It's such a compassionate and non-pathologizing methodology. So if you notice that you have a part that is kind of driving you in these ways that you've recognized are not helping your recovery journey, then it's helpful to note that, to be aware of it when it comes up, and to get a little bit of space from it. So that's why I really don't recommend saying I am a people pleaser or I am a perfectionist, but I have a part of me that has these traits, because it gives you a little space from it and lets you recognize that you also have a lot of other parts, that there are a lot of different parts of you that you could maybe lean into more, and that even deeper there is a self, like a deep self. Richard Schwartz calls it the self energy, which is basically like your highest version or your deepest, wisest version of yourself that isn't driven by these kind of demands, or like some people would say the ego. It's kind of a more spiritual part that understands that you're always whole, that you're always sacred no matter what you do. So parts work is about connecting to that self and giving yourself a little more space from these parts that may be pushing you in certain ways. And all of that is so helpful and so beautiful. And there's some really wonderful processes for parts work that you can find either on YouTube or on Insight Timer. I'm also in the process of certifying for somatic parts work, so I'm excited to bring kind of more a body-based approach to it. But I also want to add in another piece, which is that there's something behind the part or underneath the part that is contributing to, most likely, nervous system dysregulation if it's something that's not serving you. And what I mean by that is that part is only driving you because it wants to help you, because it wants to keep you safe, because there is something that it's afraid of that it believes is a threat. So for example, if you have a strong perfectionist part that's, feels like it has to be perfect and is like criticizing you or, whatever it is, that part probably learned that in order to have a positive connection with maybe your caregivers when you were younger, or teachers or other people that you really needed, that you really relied on for your survival because you were a small child, that the best way to stay in connection with them and to have that attachment is to do things perfectly, do things right, not make any mistakes. Maybe making a mistake was very dangerous for you. So this part feels that if I'm not perfect, that's a threat. That would be dangerous. And your nervous system is going to respond to that experience of not being perfect as a threat. And it's going to prepare you to fight or flight or shut down or whatever it needs to do. So that's why these patterns or these parts can be a massive contributor to nervous system dysregulation. Because it's almost this underlying background noise of threat that is very hard to turn off, because if it's a perfectionist part, like what is perfection? You're never going to get there, right? So it's just going to continue to be a threat. Or, these parts are generally, they're never satisfied. You might have a really strong achiever part that's pushing you to maybe reach a certain stage in your career. And then you get to that stage in your career, and what does it do? Does it stop? Absolutely not. It starts pushing you to the next thing, and you don't even get to take a breath and celebrate what you just accomplished, because it's still stuck in this experience of not being safe, not having safety, unless it can drive you to do these specific things. If achievement was the way that you experienced safety as a young person, if that was the only place that you were, praised or reassured, then that's what your nervous system is going to be pushing to try to get you to do, to create that sense of safety for the rest of your life, if you don't re-establish a relationship with that part and with a sense of safety outside of achievement, perfection, caretaking, etc., etc., etc. So this is something you can definitely get to with parts work, especially, if you're working with a practitioner. It's also the belief part of it, and that that underlying sense of I'm not safe unless, or I can't be safe until, that conditional aspect of safety that will never be met. That's something that I work on through the 5 Keys program, where we go through the 5 different keys, but actually in the first module, I do this belief exercise. And I'm not going to teach you the whole exercise right now, but I'll just give you kind of the premise of it, and you can try to play with this on your own if you want, or bring it to your therapist, whoever, of, okay, the belief is maybe I need to go to this volunteer thing that I signed up for. Okay, what's the belief under that? If I don't go, I'll let them down. What's the belief under that? I need to make sure that everyone else is okay. What's the belief under that? My needs are not as important as theirs. What's the belief under that? And you just keep going until you get to a core belief of I can't be safe unless, or I'm not safe if such and such. And it typically comes from some sort of childhood experience or some sort of childhood dynamic. Because these beliefs that we learn at such a young age, they stop being beliefs, they just become the way that we live our lives. So that's something that we investigate in the 5 Keys course, but I would invite you to just start to notice the patterns. See if you can take a breath when you notice them and name it as a part. This is a part that wants this, and it's trying to keep me safe by, pushing me to do these things. So that's a practice that you can start doing right now. Just taking a breath and naming it as a part, giving yourself that little bit of distance. And then I want to just bring it back full circle to why is this important for recovery? 1, because that underlying sense of I can't be safe if or until is going to drive a deep level of unease and dysregulation in your nervous system. It's going to be very hard for you to reach a sense of safety, regulation, calm, and healing if this is still running in the background and is still pushing you to do things that aren't helpful for you. Which brings me to the second point, which is that we often get into these patterns that are not helping, and then we try to use those same patterns with our healing journey, right? Like if you have a perfectionist part that was causing you to drive yourself too far and get burnt out, and then you try to do healing perfectly and make sure that everything is, exactly right, and you check every single box and, go through every single step and do it every single day or else you will never recover. That's obviously going to also drive a lot of dysregulation. So we can't bring the same patterns that got us stuck into getting us out of the stuck, if that made sense. I don't know what that sentence was. But I think I've made my point of these patterns are not just unhelpful because of being patterns. They're unhelpful because of the nervous system regulation and because of the way that you act when you're being kind of ruled or driven by these parts or these patterns. So I hope that's helpful. These parts love you, they want to help you, they're trying to keep you safe, but they're operating from a fear that's probably not even true anymore. All right, happy healing.